There. Have you ever been stuck in a rut thinking about the same things over and over again, feeling like you can't move forward because you're too fixated on that one thing, unable to move into action at all? Have you heard of the story of Narcissus? It's a famous tale about a boy who was a hunter and was admired by all who gazed upon him, no matter the gender. But Narcissus rejected all advances of any admirer until one day he was walking by a pool of water and he saw his reflection in the pool. Not realizing that it was his own, he became entranced with himself. He knelt down and he sat by the bank, staring at his reflection. And while endlessly longing to connect to this reflection that he saw, he became increasingly obsessed with himself. And he pounded on his heart, and his chest turned purple from repetitive beating, unable to move, unable to stop himself, anchored in stagnation. He ultimately died in that spot because he was so enamored with what he saw. So modern interpretations have taken this story as a lesson about the narcissistic love one has in life, how we can become obsessed with ourselves. But I want to take this a level deeper, and I want to look at what this stagnation can do to us and how it separates us from our own intuitive mindset. So the Greek word, root word of this, is narco, which means to make numb. And isn't that what happens to us when we get stuck in a rut? We become numb to everything around us. We get too fixated on our own illusion and we spiral down into this despair because we've put expectations on that illusion that really are probably never going to come true. And I think to some degree we've all had this type of experience where we fall for this fantasy that produces something that's just not going to be able to get met. And when those expectations aren't met, we have trouble shifting out of it because we've set so much on this one thought over and over again. And we've created this lock in our brain, and it's really hard to break free from that. And so when we're too fixated on that one thing and that one thing only, we really just lose ourselves. We lose ourselves in our environment. We don't see anything around us, and we get these blinders and we miss everything happening in our environment. We're unable to tap into that internal guidance that we really end up wanting to have when we kind of get to this place of despair. But we're in such a low vibration, we're in such a low thinking that it's really hard for us to hear any insight or any guidance, internal guidance, because we're down in this level and we're too wrapped up in an illusion. And so we have to kind of release ourselves. And part of it is being aware of the patterns that we create in ourselves, the thought patterns that we have, the repetitiveness that we have, the ways in which our routines and our thinking can get us stuck in a rut, and just lift our head up, lift ourselves up, and be aware of that so that we can move around. Had he just looked up and been able to see something around him, he might have been able to shift. That may not have been his personality type, but I just want to use this as an illustrative story of how it's easy to get caught up in illusions that keep us stuck into this place. So when we get stuck in those repetitive thoughts and we add this emotionally charged feeling to it, we're actively creating a reality that we don't actually want. And we're taking our self-mastery of creation and turning it on ourselves instead of using it to alchemize into something that we really do want. We sort of fall for this, sometimes fall for the potential, or we fall for this thing that we think is going to happen. And so we don't really understand when we create these channels of thought, we're telling the universe that this is what we want to have happen, even when it's not the case. And we start to build these stronger emotional tunnel visions, and we put ourselves under a spell. And not like a dark magical spell, but we have that ability as humans. We're able to have this higher level of consciousness, have these thoughts, have these feelings, and able to really communicate that so that we can co-create in the world and we can do really great things. And so we need to be mindful of when we get into situations, we put ourselves into situations, into thinking certain things, what we're doing for ourselves, and how sometimes when people want to understand how to be more intuitive and they can't tap into that, it's because we might be in this spell. It's because we might be cast in this illusion and cast in this dynamic and this parody of reality that won't allow us to be able to tap into that. And so when we cast a spell over us that keeps us stuck in these lower vibrations, and we start to feel bad or believe in any sort of limiting belief, it's going to be near impossible to hear that intuition. If we're going to be stuck in any sort of repetitive thoughts, let it be desirable. Let it be a mantra that brings you and propels you forward into the things that you actually want in life. Let it lift that veil of negative illusion and spin one forward into something that allows for actual growth. So if you like manifesting, a lot of times there is a level of illusion that is in that, but you have to also have faith that something's going to happen. So it's a positive illusion. And it's something that we do want to have, but it's also a lot of discerning between the two to understand what you're putting out in the world. Anytime, when you think about karma and you think about how things are going to work in the world, everything that you reap, you sow. Every thought, every word, every action that you put out into the world comes back to you. So be mindful. We all have to be mindful of what we set in motion and set out in the world. What we feel, what we think will come back in some way, shape, or form. So when we think about being intuitive, it's really having intentions that are pure, that are good for ourselves, and getting that guidance to help us move forward. It's really hard to get guidance when you're not in a place that you want to be. If you have that channel open, it's going to be easier to then open up and be able to pull yourself out of those moments because you've done it before. But you have to be aware that you're stuck. And if you're aware that you're stuck and that you're in a rut, then you're able to change it. You're able to pivot out of that and just move around. And so by being aware of what's happening within us and acknowledging our behavioral patterns, we're able to tune into the nature around us, our own nature, and shift our focus and shift it so that you're not sitting on a bank by a pool thinking that the reflection is actually another person. You see that it's the pool. You can see the ripples in the water. There's no illusion there. You're seeing the reality for what it is. And by being aware enough to know that you're caught up in any overthinking or obsessive thoughts in the wrong details, then you're able to pivot into the right ones. Sometimes you think that everything, or we think that everything is in the right place and we want to move our, best foot forward. And then it turns out that it's not. That's okay. That's life. Some things need time to reveal itself, but we also need to take that into account and know when to pivot and not hold on to things from the past or things that we thought were and they're not. So how do we utilize some intuitive techniques so that we can start to innovate? And my goal on this channel, my goal with my work is to incorporate intuitive techniques so that we can innovate in our work and most importantly in our lives, because the work, as we know as creatives, there's no separation between work and life. It's kind of all in the same. You're always thinking about what it is that you are wanting to create in the world. There's no off button when work hours are done. There's stuff always going on, in the background of your mind. And you always want to know, just even in life itself, how can I always kind of bring in that creative mentality, that creative life to create the life that I want, and how to do that in ways when you go down a path, it feels right, and then you kind of hit a roadblock or you kind of get stuck or you have to know how to back up and kind of go in a different direction. It's just how life is. So let's look at a couple ways of what is an intuitive mindset, and then we'll get into 3 powerful ways to break some stuck habits and then get into that intuition. So an intuitive mindset is one that is open to new discoveries and interpretations. How are you letting that in? How are you letting new discoveries in? How are you letting new interpretations in? How are you seeing the world as an illumination and that everything is a sign? Everything is an answer. Everything could be just something either just to experience, could be an answer to something, and just be open. Just be open without forcing or expecting anything in return. An intuitive mindset is free from shackled and routine thinking. So sometimes it's really easy. We kind of have these stories that we play, these old mantras, these old ways of patterns of trauma from childhood. I was this happened to me. This isn't going to be anything, any different than before. We have to be able to recognize when we're playing that record over and over again, because you know how the record's going to end. It's going to be the same songs over and over again. And we need to shift the record. We need to change the thinking and the mindset so that we are free and open and we're creating new thoughts. We want to create a new life. We have to put in new thoughts. We have to take an old thought that doesn't work and we have to put it in, we have to replace it with something new. An intuitive mindset is something that has perspective that allows answers to arrive when you're not looking for them. So that goes back to having an open mind in the sense of allowing the environment to shift, allowing things to just come in and not dismissing it either. I think a lot of times people are intuitive, they just don't want to take the advice that they hear. They don't want to read the sign, or they don't know how to read the sign. They don't know what to do with it, or how to hone it in, or how to bring it in. And the more that you can kind of play with it and like maybe research what that is, I think I said that in the last video, of just kind of moving towards, getting insight, getting an answer in the least expected places, or just being open to a new experience and letting that inspire you. That in itself is huge. You're going to really never be in a rut. You're never going to get stuck because you're going to have these techniques and these tools to know how to just get you out of that. Another thought is an intuitive mind cannot sit in isolation. Physically, you can't. If you're just sitting there in one spot, you're going to get stuck. You're going to feel like you're in a rut. If every day looks like the next day and there isn't some way that you're bringing in new information into your mind, you're not moving your body, you're not engaging with your spirit, of course you're going to get stuck. Of course you're going to feel like you're in a rut. You need to move. You need to move things around. Intuition feeds off of energetic stimulation in the body, mind, and spirit. It's going to need the help of your environment to help communicate to you. It's not just always being in prayer. It's not always just being in meditation. That's helpful. That's a nice way to open that up so that when you're out and about in the world, you have that channel that's open to you. So let's go into 3 powerful ways to break free from stuck from stuck behavior and into our intuition. So the first one, I kind of mentioned it, escape from your daily routine. If you're really just kind of tired of the same old, how can you break that up? Start small, get bigger. It's not, I need to quit my job and change everything about my life. It's maybe I take a different route to work. Maybe I take a different route on a walk. Maybe I try a different type of food. Maybe I just do something that feels inspired, spontaneous, something that's just a little bit out of the norm that I wouldn't normally do, so that I can shake up the energy around me. How can I get out of that same rote behavior so that I'm letting new information come in? Way number 2, move the mind into the body to feel. A lot of times we get stuck in our head and we think the same things 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 over and over again. And we need to just stop thinking, stop putting those thoughts in our head. And I love you doing yoga. I talk about this a lot. I think it's a really great time because it's so active and it's hot yoga, so that there's no way I really can't think of anything but being in the body and moving around, going for a walk, or being in a place. Meditation's really great, or just something that not quite an escape route like sometimes movies are, sports are, but something that just allows us to feel. And feeling is really tough because there are things that we might actually want to numb ourselves from because we don't want to feel. And that's an indication that it's time to heal. It really kind of is. It's time to heal. And that brings me into a powerful way for number 3, to incorporate all of your senses into an experience. So in some experiences, they're not always going to be pleasant. They're not always going to be in this high vibe, happy place. Sometimes experience and senses means I have to cry. I have to move through an emotion to kind of get to a better emotion or a more peaceful emotion. We're like a really beautiful instrument that has a whole range of emotions that we're going to have to feel. To feel alive, you're going to need to feel the tippy top and the very, very bottom and everything in between. I think I was watching a piece of like a snippet from a documentary from Lady Gaga. And right after a show, great show, sold out, huge stadium, she leaves and she's in tears, crying. And she had said that in past interviews where like she'll just get a glass of wine and sit in bed and cry. So these high crescendos of moments where you're like, you're at the top of your game, you're famous, you're having these like huge, huge, exciting moments. And then you have to, like, it's like a pendulum that swings and you're going to feel the other side of that because it's so much emotion that has to go through her to perform. The other side has to come out. That is just human nature. That's her, that's human nature. And just as an example of, holding yourself back, numbing yourself out from not feeling is actually doing you a disservice. And it also doesn't allow for intuitive minds or intuitive mindset to come through because sometimes you need to move through those emotions so that you can have the realization of why some experiences happened. Why did I have to go through that? Why did I show up this way? Why? Just why? Why did these things happen so that I could understand, okay, maybe next time will be better, or maybe next time I'll do this a little differently, or now I understand my nature more, so I don't have to put myself in these situations, or hey, this was really helpful. I learned a lot from this experience so that I'm now stronger, better, wiser, and I can go through and do the things that I want to do and have the life that I want to have. So just to kind of wrap this up, if you start to feel stuck in a rut and overthinking, and you really want to tap into your intuition, become aware first of the behavior that is going on and know that you're stuck. Acknowledge it. I'm stuck. This doesn't feel good. So go and do the exact opposite of the thing that you've been doing. If you've been sitting in front of your computer all day, go outside into the nature, into the world, into the sun, and do something opposite so that you're shifting your perspective completely and just see what happens. If you've been sitting all day and not moving, go do the exact opposite and go stretch, go walk, go move your body, jump up and down, go dance. If you've only been in the mind all day and you've only experienced the senses in one area, try something else and start to see where your guidance starts to point you. Because if you ask your internal self, your higher self, what do I really need right now? And you really listen and just follow that, you'll be surprised at what will come. So thank you for being here. I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks. Take care. Bye.